Hello YouTubers, Victorinox fan here, finally with the Mini A-100 review. I had actually filmed this a little earlier, but when I mentioned that I was going to do this review on my last account update, one of my subscribers, Haywood F, if I'm not mistaken, PM'd me asking if I could, cover a few points in greater detail. So, while I did touch base on pretty much all of what he asked, I think I could have emphasized a couple of them a bit more, so I decided to reshoot it. So, let's begin. I've got my notes, and I've got the knife. So, without further ado, let's start this review. The Mini A-100 as an executive summary is probably the most plain and simple looking Emerson that you could buy. I think it's a good knife, and if you watch my reviews, I do say that a lot because I generally don't get around to reviewing knives that I'm not too excited about, because generally I'm quite lazy when it comes to making reviews, so if I really couldn't care about a knife, I end up usually flipping it before it comes time for me to review it. So I do like this knife. It has some great strengths and some weaknesses, where this knife would not probably be the most appropriate tool for the job. But, like all Emerson, it does keep a lot of the core concept intact. So the couple quick specs, like 4 and an 1/8 inch handle, 3-inch blade. The blade length is actually pretty much the exact same as a small Spenza, but you have just a slightly longer handle. So it's an EDC size knife. A little bit of history. Specs as in G10 handle, titanium liner lock, stainless steel 300 opposing liner, double detent, Phillips and flathead screw construction, 154 cm blade, Rockwell tested to about 57 to 59. The same specs on pretty much every production Emerson knife that there is, so nothing new to say there. Now, what would be interesting probably is to kind of go over the history of this blade. So the Emerson A-100 and the Mini A-100 are kind of throwbacks to his pre-tack days, Emerson's pre-tack days. So before the CQC6 was made, Emerson was actually known for making a lot of dress folders. Very ornate, very pretty looking dress folders. You could say they had some similarities to Michael Walker style kind of knives, but they did have their own, flair, and they were popular. However, once he started making the CQC6, he was bit by the tactical bug, and never looked back. So this design, by its clean, slim lines and the lack of a lot of ergonomic choils, etc., they're kind of a throwback to that old Emerson design. And his pre-tacks are really collectible. They'll go for a couple G's and a drop of a hat. So that's kind of cool, good history. However, that does, provide some differences, which I think are a nice addition to the lineup. So let's see, what should I go over? That's a bit of the history. Fit and finish, I just want to get this out of the way right now before people ask. It's functional, fit. Finish is not pretty. As you can tell, it's kind of worn up a bit. But the G10 backspacer is not perfectly lined up with the liners, and these little things like that really don't have an impact on the performance are there on Emerson's. I wanted to get this out of the way because I personally think that at this day and age, with the amount of information available on the internet, if you get an Emerson new and you're surprised that the fit and finish is not like, Benchmade, etc. kind of quality, you probably should have done more research. He's been very vocal about it, so that's just kind of my point of view on it. You should know what you're getting into before you drop the coin on one. It is perfectly functional, fit-wise. There are no structural issues at all. So I'll get that out of the way. A couple things, obviously, that I wanted to really talk about also are the variances you might find in this model. So, at least in 2011, what he did 2 runs of this knife. And since Emerson works on a run basis, they end up sometimes having a few variances. In this particular case, the differences are the first run has a finer texture G10, which I personally prefer. Still quite grippy. In fact, it's probably the best Emerson G10 I've felt, in my opinion. But it comes with this slightly thinner liner that he offers. So to give you a bit of a comparison, most full size or even a lot of mini Emersons that are actually like 3.5 inches and above blade length have the slightly thicker liner. So actually all of them do have the slightly thicker liner. Some of the small minis like this and the micro, like the Micro Commander, they use the 1mm thick liner. I think it's 1mm. Keep in mind that this is not a wimpy liner lock, it's an average liner lock thickness, so it'll handle most medium duty tasks you'd put a liner lock to, since it's mated by the looks of it fairly properly. People tend to forget that the thick liner lock on the Emersons, it's not like beefy frame lock thickness, but I get to see a lot of any production folder with liners much thicker than this that don't have a cutout. This is just a solid piece, no cutout on the liner. So keep in mind that the cutout is usually where you're going to find the main weak point. And it's kind of how thick the cutout is generally how strong the liner lock is, or frame lock. So thinner liner, a little but not wimpy. The second run, however, has the newer, more aggressive G10 style. That's kind of like the Cold Steel G10, very abrasive, and it has a slightly thicker liner. So personally, I love these scales and the thicker liner, but I don't have that, and unfortunately that's kind of what I'm going to have to live with. I've not had any issues with that, so I guess I can just kind of transition this to lockup while I'm here. Lockup on this is rock solid, no issues whatsoever. Big stop pin, which I think is a completely underrated aspect of liner locks. It's not just your liner, but your stop pin. Your stop pin does wear over time, and that will cause blade play. Heads up. So a wimpy stop pin is something to be wary about as well. It will wear down faster. So you have that. Lockup is strong, solid. I will say though, and this is one honest thing, gotta be honest, that I don't think there was enough spring tension on this liner lock. I've never had this problem with my other Emersons, so I think this is a bit of an anomaly. So I just took it apart, really easy to take apart, bent it over a bit, and we're absolutely nothing. Could I possibly force lock rock? Yes. But you can do that with pretty much almost any liner lock, in my opinion. If you're using that much torque, you're probably, look, perfectly solid, no issues whatsoever. So lockup is dead solid. Blade's not perfectly center after I did that a little bit to the left, but that's all there is to that. One thing that Haywood wanted me to touch upon was G10 wear. How does it wear on your pockets? This particular G10, not so bad. This particular G10, very bad. This will rip your pockets to like shred. It'll shred it completely. I actually removed the pocket clip on mine, and that's going to deal more with ergonomics because I felt that the clip was too large for this particular knife, and the spring tension was so tight that it ended up just being kind of a bulky thing in my palm. So I got rid of it, and I just dropped this knife in my pocket when I am carrying and using it. Now, that kind of all segues more into ergonomics. How the ergonomics of this knife, or realistically the lack thereof. This is kind of a trend in his older knives. His older knives, like even when he started making the 6 and the 5, and the 6 and the 7, you'll notice that they had curves, but not like very aggressive curves. Not like, you know, Commander days onwards, where really noticeable choil, very ergonomic grip, perfect balance. I mean, these are like, you know, your hand locks in here, it's meant to be held like this, you hold it different grips, it'll work, but it's not usually as comfortable. So it's pretty much meant for reverse saber and saber grip, which perfectly adequate grips your hand, just falls into that place. This knife, not so much. It's actually a perfectly straight handle, which I like in a smaller EDC blade. And smaller EDC blades, I generally like more straighter handled knives. That allows you to be more versatile in your grip. Now, you have to obviously bevel the edges, which is what he did, and that allows you to hold it in a hammer fist grip, no issues, saber grip, reverse forward, reverse backward, chest lever grip even. The benefit of this very straight handle is it's very versatile. So in this case, the lack of ergonomics makes this knife ergonomic. A pretty cool little fact. So I think you'll find that this knife won't be uncomfortable. It is quite comfortable, and the fact that it's so slim helps as well. balances perfectly at this choil right here, or a little finger cutout. It's going to be hard to do it on camera, but pretty much it falls right there. And Emersons are great. They're known for being very, very well balanced. Now, what else is there to talk about the handle? Access to the liner lock is fairly limited, but not too difficult. There's a little bit of a cutout, which will actually affect your thumb stug more, but accessing the liner is not too complicated. That's pretty much the handle I have to talk about. Let's say the blade. The blade, 154 cm, very thick 3mm grind, so it's a lot of steel behind it, which surprisingly works on this knife. I'll be honest with you, it cuts surprisingly well, at least in objects like wood. I have reprofiled it. I don't know if the lighting will capture that. It's a bit of a semi-convex chisel edge. I just backed up the degree and it ended up being a bit convex. Now, it is a thick grind. There's a lot of steel. I don't know how this will capture. There's a lot of steel behind that edge. So you'd think that it wouldn't bite into objects very well, but it took off nice, decent sized chunks from wood when I was testing it. Now, I'm not sure why it does it, because it is chisel on the wrong side and it is kind of thick, so I'm surprised it did, but it did an admirable job. So it works in that respect, and most things, it's sharp, it'll cut. So I don't know if it's hair popping sharp. Yep, it's hair popping sharp. I have used this and I could probably use a stropping, but yeah, it's very sharp and it cuts well. It won't do like fruits very well, but you're using an Emerson for fruits, so that's kind of an improperly selected tool. You're doing a lot of food prep. Get an Opinel or Swiss Army knife, or maybe even like anything that is not a tactical folder. Just FYI. Maintenance, super easy. I just maybe take an ultrafine rod occasionally and do 2 or 3 passes and then strop it and you're good to go. Really, it's such an easy steel to maintain, holds a good edge. Nothing more to say. 154 cm at 57 to 59 is a good EDC steel. You don't need a super steel for EDC tasks. The more I use knives, the less I find myself inclined to buy a knife solely because of steel. That's edges, that's blade shape. Blade shape is a simple spear point with a little bit of belly that works for EDC tasks. Breaks down cardboard box as well. It just is a simple functional task. It's a little bit slimmer, I think, as a blade shape than the say the Sebenza, but it functions quite well. Ergonomics, blade shape, chisel edge, maintenance is easy. Surprising performance. Deployment, yeah, that's gonna be the big ticker. This straight handle knife has one problem. This cutout is too small. I gotta be frank, I really think they should have made this cutout a little bit bigger. You can get your thumb easily, right-handed. No way left-handed. Really. I just ended up, using my pinky finger, my middle finger, my left hand, if I need to open it like that and flick it open. Or you could actually use a little butt of the knife there and open it like that. Kind of like, what's that knife name? The Boker Excalibur, I think it's called. You could just use the very thumb portion there and it opens pretty easily. So I do think deployment could be heavily improved if they increase the cutout. And you can tell they had to go around it by, see how the little thumb stud's angled? I'm pretty sure this is a production standard. He drills the hole for the thumb plate at a slight angle, so it sticks out the slightest bit more on the right side, making it easier to get hold of. It's smooth though, very smooth blade. Snaps up fine, and whoops, locks solid all the time. Detent is better than my Emerson Horseman, but obviously you could shake it out like all Emersons, so heads up on that if that bothers you. Lockup is decent. I mean, overall, I'm pretty happy with this knife. I've had good experiences with it. It's functioned very well. I kind of like the slight tactical feel. This is a black coated blade. Not a huge fan of black coating, but it has held up very well. I have used it and it's wearing only slightly. And I've had this since July. And this is probably what I carried solely for July and August. just pretty much every day, testing this blade on wood. Anything I could cut with a knife, I tried to, and it's held up well. It's a good functional straight-handled EDC at only 3.2 ounces, so only about 0.2 ounces more than the Sebenza. It is a lot thicker though, FYI. It's thicker than my Sebenza. It's an Emerson, so it has most of the thickness of a regular Emerson. I mean, Emersons don't really thin out in their mini models, which is a good thing and a bad thing depending on how you like it. What else do I carry? My Strider PT, actually, that's what I've been carrying lately. If I can get it out of the frickin' thing. It's a hair bit thicker than that as well. It's not a thin knife in terms of width, but if you're just carrying this knife in the pocket, since it's slim this way, it carries relatively well. Overall, it's a good EDC blade. I'm very happy with it, and if you're looking for an Emerson that's a little bit more EDC oriented, I think this is a great way to go. Thanks for watching, guys. Peace out. I hope it was informative and not too long. See you around.